Hey guys, what's up? It's Marie with Swipe in the City. Welcome back to another shit show. Here as always with Michelle, and we do have Mike the producer in the house with us tonight for a limited time only.
Hey! Hey, what's up?
Mike, today's a very, very special day, so we wanted to wish you a happy Veterans Day. What'd you do to celebrate? Did you celebrate Veterans Day?
I drank a lot of beers and I played some golf. And now I'm drinking more beers. What's happening?
Did you also acquire an accent? I don't know that you had that on the last episode. I just want to make sure that nobody's confused.
He rebranded.
You immediately adopt a southern accent when you join the Marine Corps, so it's like an alter ego now.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
We'll know. Well, Michelle, I think you inspired tonight's beer choice, so I say we jump into the beer plug.
Hell yeah. Also, you say hell yeah less. I'm like, he's got a little twang. I'm like, hell yeah, brother. So tonight we're drinking. I think it's a repeat. I think we plugged it before, but I was really having a funny day and was fiending for some Lazarus beer, and Marie happens to be working from there today, so she picked up 40 Days and 40 Nights, which is like one of their flagship IPAs. Definitely one of my favorite beers in Austin. Would highly recommend.
I was gonna say, I mean, it's a classic. It's an easy IPA if you don't drink IPAs too.
It's my go-to if I ever go to Lazarus. It's literally the first beer I order. So.
And there you have it. You heard it here first, guys. So we've been, in terms of today's topic, we have been kind of spitballing this for a couple of weeks now, Michelle and I. A few different, obviously, circumstances have arisen to inspire said topic, but we're talking about breakups today, and we use the term breakups loosely because in 2020 when you're dating, it's usually not that simple.
Well, I also, I was telling one of my friends, oh, hold on, I gotta draft this breakup text real quick. And they're like, breakup? I was like, well, I just mean, so when I use the term breakup these days and, within dating, it's pretty much any time I'm just communicating with someone that I no longer want to, hang out with them or see them. So it may, sometimes I'm sending that text after hanging out once or twice. But yeah, to me, it's just this idea of communicating the end.
It's like see you never.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Had fun, thanks for the drinks, but we'll see. I don't want to bring home my mom.
Yeah, we all know that Danielle Hannah 68 has some very high standards, so she would not have approved of some of these fellas.
She does love her alligator boots, though. But I mean, I think, especially right now, one of the biggest things is do you send that quote unquote breakup text and you actually finalize hey, I'm not interested in you, or do you just ghost them? I think that's probably the biggest question that I would hope most people who are dating are thinking about.
Thinking kind of. Mike leans in. No, I think you're kind of a piece of shit if you ghost somebody. Honestly, just be vocal. Tell somebody what they did wrong, and so they can get better as a person. If you don't do that, then you're kind of a piece of shit.
But what about, so we've had a couple of situations recently where you were actually actively a part of one. I told this a couple of episodes back, a guy that was friend-zoned, the Kirk story. And, I blocked him everywhere, and you had reached out wanting to share the good word. And then he didn't stop. So would that be we did what we could.
I mean, honestly, I don't know what you said, but no, but I told him some effective things, I think, and when I initially reached out to him, I told him certain things. I said, hey, I read this book. He was like, I read that book. I didn't know. And then,
God, he did not.
And then he reached out to me a few weeks later, and he was like, hey, I reread the book. I know what you're saying. I completely understand. I just don't know why X, Y, and Z. And I was like, well, maybe you should just focus on your fucking self. and then somebody will want you around. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. Is like if you can't be your own individual self, then fuck off. I don't know. My pizza's ready. I gotta go.
And on that beautiful life advice,
Bye, Mike.
thank you for joining us today.
My girls, bye Blue.
I feel like that was like a Charlie's Angels moment. Bye, girls.
So y'all know I'm gonna say it. The timing of it and what you owe someone, I think is absolutely a spectrum. So Mike is like running out of the door. He's like, I can't get out of this place fast enough.
Could we be any more stereotypical to ourselves?
We're on brand.
We are. We're always on brand.
But yeah, no, I think it's a spectrum, and I feel like again, we're using the term breakup really loosely, but more so around communication. And later in the episode, I think we can talk about more serious breakups and kind of once you're more involved with someone. But I do think it's really interesting to think about. Okay, so if you've gone out with someone once, right? If they don't text you, you don't text them. I don't think that situation requires a breakup. Even if it's like a horrible date or just a mediocre date or whatever. I think, kind of like Mike was saying, we'll give them that feedback. It's like, well, you don't really owe that person anything at that point.
Right. Well, and I think too, when it comes, like there's feedback and there's constructive feedback, but I think you also kind of have to consider, like, is the person really in a space where you think they're going to implement said feedback? So the reason I brought up the whole, the guy from Bumble, who had already been friend zoned, the reason was because I was actually actively trying to give him feedback, and how do you break up with somebody that's not even like somebody you're interested in? Very strange. But he just wasn't listening to the feedback. So it was like him and I had a back and forth text conversation for a while, and it was just, it had to stop. And I didn't see it coming in his situation, but like there have been other guys that I've spoken to, or other guys that friends have spoken to, where you can tell based on certain red flags, if you will, that they're not gonna actually, you can say, hey Michelle, had a great time, but for X, Y, and Z reason, you're not the person for me. And there's certain kinds of people you'll see that will go back and be like, no, I'm not what you said, like I'm not anything that you just said. And you're like, well, that's actually what I have to do is based on this conversation. And so they're just not going to listen to the feedback.
Yeah, well, you had, there was a situation somewhat recently where a guy had like gotten our numbers, and you were just like, hey, like this doesn't seem like a good match. And he was basically, yeah. And he was just like, first of all, an asshole, and like wasn't like actually reading what you were texting him.
Yeah.
But then he got like defensive but aggressive about it. And I think that is something where, especially like you've been on a few dates with someone, like I was kind of hesitant. There's someone I've been out with a couple of times. They were already showing some pretty big red flags, along with like controlling and manipulative behaviors.
Waves, red flags.
Yeah, the red flag was like burning, and I was like, I don't know, like he's kind of chill to hang out with. And I'm like, no. So, but in that situation, I was actually a little nervous to send that text because I had no idea what kind of response I was gonna get back. I didn't know if he was gonna be on the same page. I didn't know if I was gonna get like an aggressive response back or anything. And it worked out fine. Like I had sent it, and he said, I don't know, have a good life or something.
Fuck off.
Something like more mature. But yeah, I think there's also that concern, and that's part of why people ghost is to avoid confrontation.
100%. Well, and it's for a girl that's been in a situation, or a guy, for somebody who's been in a situation where they can see the red flags of like controlling and manipulative behavior. And I understand not everybody has been not so blessed to see that, but when you see that and you like, see that like foreshadowing of like repeating said behavior again, it is really nerve-wracking to send that message and be like, oh fuck, like, is this guy, like, do they know where I live? Like, are they gonna hunt me down? Like, do they know where I hang out? What's gonna happen? Or should I just poof, disappear? It's hard.
Yeah, and I think it's also it also depends on the time investment. Like I think if you've been out with someone once, or you've just talked and you've never met, you know, or even if you've just done like a Zoom, hey Blue, hey Blue. If you've just done like a digital date or something like that, I feel like you owe them a little bit less. I think if you've hung out with someone multiple times, in that case, you do owe them something. But it's also like, okay, so where is that line between when you owe someone like just that text message or an actual, you know, phone call, or like meeting in person to have that conversation?
Right.
Like, what do you, I mean, I guess it depends on every situation, but what do you think some of the like differentiating factors are there where you would say, okay, I actually owe this person like an in-person?
Blue is actively participating, for those of you not watching us on video.
He's also like closing his eyes like a little baby right now. I don't know what's happening.
He's very serious though.
But so for my recent breakups, we'll call them,
quote unquote,
I've been cleaning house.
It's cuffing season, gotta review the roster.
Yeah, cleaning house over here. Each of those situations was like more like a text, felt more like a text. But where do you think the line is where someone deserves to have like a phone call or an in-person conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say texting is fine. Number one, if you do feel like it's going to be a situation where you could potentially be hurt or stalked or whatever, definitely text and then block. But for everything else, there is so much gray area. Like, I think for me, if I'm gonna warrant like an actual in-person breakup though, to me that's like, we had a conversation, we had the DTR, the relationship conversation. We decided that we are boyfriend, girlfriend, like this is a real thing. If we've had that conversation, then in my mind, I would say 90% of the time it should be an actual, either a phone call if like it's a long distance bullshit thing, in person if possible. I would say for pretty much anything else, and especially like, you know, you've been dating somebody for a couple of months, it's nothing serious, and then you just decide you're not into it for whatever reason, I would say that's fine to text. You don't really, I mean, because then you drag it out, then it's like, oh, let's have this dinner, and you can usually tell when somebody like wants to meet with you like that. You can kind of feel it, and you're like, yeah, no, this is gonna be, like, I'm nervous, this is gonna be a weird conversation, whatever is brought up, it's not good, I can feel like the gray cloud over me. You know what I mean? And so then I feel like that just makes it worse than it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I had a fun one this last week.
You've broken up with so many guys this week, dude.
It's been over a few weeks.
It's been a busy week.
Cleaning house. But there's someone I was talking to, and if y'all saw our weekend wind down episode, we recorded that like a few days ago. I was like, you know, I feel like I'm getting slow ghosted right now. I'm kind of feeling it. And I had someone reach out and ask like what I meant by that, what that means. In the way that I was using it, it's essentially they're still communicating with you, but it's short. They might not be reaching out first. They might stop texting. They're keeping it brief. If you bring up hanging out, they're potentially kind of like avoiding it.
Maybe.
And yeah, maybe, or like, oh, I'll see, or whatever. So someone I've hung out with a few times, we've been chatting like regularly enough, and I didn't hear from him for a couple of days, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tried to reach out about about a comedy thing I was gonna go to and something else, and got kind of just pretty not weird responses, but just really
Like brushed off.
like brushed off, yeah. So I had a feeling it was a slow ghost, but I was like, okay, I'm, just gonna try to get another beer with this person, see what the situation is, and like have a conversation around it. And I don't think that's necessary in all cases, but for me personally, like I prefer a finite end to something than kind of the game of like, oh well, they just might genuinely be busy this week or this or that. Like I would rather just like cut the cord.
Or the guy who's like kind of like he wants to keep you at the bottom of his roster, but like isn't really actively pursuing it. It's just all one-sided.
Right.
That doesn't feel good.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So we were like able to grab a beer and kind of I just brought it up and talked to him about it, and he was essentially just confirmed that I was totally right. And his reasoning for it didn't really feel totally fair to me, and so
Why would he say?
he was implying that I was basically only going out and going on dates with him because I was like using him for drinks. Which if any of y'all
Coughs loudly.
if any of y'all know me, that's just not my MO, that is not my personality. That's just not
You
whatever.
can pay for your own drinks.
I can't.
I know this.
Everyone wants to be
As
treated.
your wife.
As my yeah. As my wife. Everyone wants to be treated out, and if someone offers, like, I'm not gonna be like, no, I will. Oh, I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. I feel like I am a little more conventional in the back, but I'm like, yeah, like if you're gonna offer, you're gonna put your card out first or whatever it is. Like, I'm not gonna argue with you about it. But
Then it gets really weird.
in this particular case, I thought back, like, so we had like a couple of beers, and then just kind of like left it at whatever. And then the next day, I was thinking about it, and I was like, wait a minute, I paid for like 90% of my own shit when I was out with him. So he didn't even. It wasn't even like, oh, I could see this. I was like, this is a him issue. This is like his insecurity, not mine. And so I then sent the breakup text. So I was like, hey, I just like it doesn't feel like we're on the same page.
I just had a potentially wrong, but on the other hand, also very potentially right thought. And I wonder, because we all hear about, guys have this thing in their head, like, oh, like I bought you dinner, I bought you drinks, therefore at the end of the date, I should get cough, cough, whatever it is that he wants to do in bed with you later. We're going to keep that one PG. And so I wonder if it has something to do with the fact that after a couple of times out with you, he didn't get that.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I think he really was jaded. And to be fair, like,
He might have been played like that. Like, that could jade him too. Like,
Right.
there's definitely, I hear about it a lot. And girls sitting around like, oh, do I wait until the third or the fifth date? Or is it slutty to sleep with him on the second date if I like him?
all the things.
Honey, just do what you want. You do you, boo-boo.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could have played a factor. Based on the way he was, like, expressing it and talking about it, though, it really just feels like because he's, like, dating so expensive, blah, blah, blah.
That's annoying.
So, which is an interesting thought, right? But I've talked to some other guys, because I was like, do I come off this way? Because if I'm coming off this way, that is not what I want, and that's not who I am. And so, and they were just like, no, you're kind of like the opposite. So, so I felt a little bit better.
I was gonna say, and not that my opinion matters. But
The ironic thing about it is that, like, when we had met up on whatever day it was, like, I got his first beer. Like, I bought him a beer, and I was like, man.
Yeah, it's definitely a personal problem, one way or the other.
That was still a situation where I was like, okay, we've hung out a few times. Like, I was like, I don't want to just, I think I even said that in the message, like, I would much rather just, like, have this, like, hey, we're not on the same page. We can move on. I'd much rather just say it than slow ghost on both sides. Like that's
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like just cut it. I don't know.
I don't like the slow ghosting thing. For me, like you mentioned at the beginning of this, you know, when two people kind of naturally ghost each other after like maybe a first or second date or something, and just both parties lose communication, there isn't one side. I feel like when we're speaking to these like quote breakup texts, like we're talking about when at least one side is sitting there like, okay, where's my text back?
Absolutely, yeah. It's when at least like one of the people is still actively trying to communicate.
Yeah, because I think, you know, it's like sometimes you both just don't have it. You sit there and you're like trying to force a conversation, and both people can feel it, and that happens. But I think most of the time we're in this kind of weird situation where whether it's you or whether it's them, somebody is trying to communicate and somebody is trying to not.
Someone's trying to slowly, like, I don't know. I mean, I get it at the same time, because in a lot of cases, the slow ghost will like cause the other person to stop responding to or stop reaching out. And depending on the situation, like sometimes I will do that, but this particular one just kind of annoyed me. In a way, I was like, okay, I want to find an end to this. But yeah, I don't know. 2020 is weird, man.
I mean, yeah, and dating at any point is fucking weird, but yeah, I mean, I think it's tough, but moral of the story, I think at the end of the day, especially I can speaking to women, I feel like one of the things that we're like sitting around the brunch table, like having these conversations, we're constantly like looking for this closure. So like for me personally, I would rather send a message like you did, be like, hey look, I just don't think this, I don't think this is gonna work. Or vice versa, like I'll say something to provoke them to say that, like, hey bro, like you've been fucking weird lately, like what's the deal? And I have done that to people and it's not worked in my favor, and in other circumstances, like I've actually like gotten like genuine messages back saying like, no, look, like I'm, you know, my dad just died or something. No, I didn't actually get that back as a message. But something extreme, like something just happened and I like, but I'm interested in you and like whatever. Because that'll happen too. And then at least you know, assuming they're being genuine, you know that like you're still kind of on the same page. So one way or another, it's like a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like a lot of people just ghost because it's easier, right? Obviously.
It's totally easier.
But I think people also overthink it, and they feel like they have to. Honestly, depending on the situation, like sure you can give someone feedback, but you also don't really owe that to them either. I mean, if it's a really particular thing and you're like, hey, your actions here made me feel this way because of this, like we're not a match, sure. But most of the messages I've sent lately were very short and sweet. I'm just honest and just like, hey, I respect you, so I just want to let you know I don't feel like we're on the same page, or I don't feel like we're moving in the same direction. It can be so simple, and then you send it, and honestly, I'd say 95% of the time that I've done that, I've gotten a positive response back. Yeah. Like, thank you for...
Or at least neutral.
Or neutral. Yeah, maybe not... They're not like... They don't send me like, cheers.
Way to go, Michelle.
Cheers emojis. It's a bunch of gifts.
Oh my god, I could die.
Like, thank you for telling me. Thank you for being honest. Like, we're on the same... Whatever it is. And I mean, that can be... I guess a friend zone text isn't really a breakup text, so I feel like that's different, but
but you're still leveling out like where you're at and making that clear. And I think one of the biggest issues that I've realized dating, like pretty much ever since I got out of college, is really coming down to the fact of like not everybody really wanting to be direct and upfront and honest, and that even the people like we sit here and like, oh, I'm so direct. It's like we pretend it's easy. It's not easy all the time, but like I feel like everybody wants that, but at the same time they don't want to give it.
Yeah, and I feel like there probably are people who would actually rather get ghosted.
Oh yeah.
but it's just, again, it's just like not necessarily our style. And as the breaker upper, you don't necessarily know someone's what their preference is there or their like communication style necessarily. So I feel like it's always just even like a courtesy to send the message.
And I feel like at the end of the day, like if that makes you feel like it's over too, I think that's invaluable. Like for me, sending that is like, okay, cool. Like now I've let him know where I stand, and I don't need to worry about it anymore. And like if he reaches back out, that's on him for just being a dumbass.
Right. Right.
You know, so I feel like that's my whole reason for doing it. But I mean, I've definitely probably ghosted my fair share of people for just lack of caring.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. We all do it. I mean, we almost had an episode.
We've had a couple attempts at episodes about ghosting.
What about like, let's go unmatching. So if you're in the apps, if you're chatting, I feel like I have a lot of stories for this episode that are all like relatively recent. But what causes you to unmatch? So like the breakup.
I don't really unmatch a whole lot. Like I'll unmatch. Like I recently unmatched somebody because again, like we never met. We didn't really talk that much. He didn't even have my phone number. And in my mind, for that reason, it didn't warrant an actual conversation. It didn't warrant a message. So, but we were chatting on Hinge, like back in August. And like chatting pretty consistently. I was out of town and quarantining for most of August, if anybody didn't know. So I was pretty much out of the dating pool, but I was still on the apps. And it was one of those things, he just didn't make it post-quarantine, right? Like he didn't keep my interest long enough for me to meet up with him after I got out of my quarantine/vacation. And so I just stopped responding. He had sent some message that to me meant nothing. And then he kept sending messages after, like he'd wait a week and send another message. Wait a week and send another message. And I think it was coming to the point where like he was still messaging me months later and I was not responding. And it's just like the classic, like the memes of just like all one-sided, like blue messages all the way down and there's no responses back and you're like, really, bro? Like, really? And I'm like, so part of me at this point, I'm like, I feel kind of bad because you're clearly not getting the hint. Like, you've asked me multiple questions that I should be responding to and I'm not because I'm bored. And so it was just like, you know what, fuck it. Like, we're just gonna unmatch you. Like, I feel bad for you. And then I think he followed me on Instagram and has been doing the same thing. Unsure if it's the same person, but I'm very convinced that it could very well be the same guy. Unrelated, but can we talk about the Instagram message we got on Swipe in the City? Which one? Hey, I saw you on Tinder. What? Can we make a PSA here and now? I think we need an official PSA. Guys, if you find us on any dating app, whether it's me or Michelle, and you slide into the DMs, because we both have Swipe in the City plugged on our profiles, don't slide into the Swipe in the City DMs. If you are trying to ask one of us out on a date, sliding into the Swipe in the City DMs is only going to provoke us to tell you that you're an idiot and should listen to our podcast. Like, this is literally the easiest way for a guy to know exactly, like, if a guy really wanted to go out with one of us, like, he saw your Tinder profile and was like, oh my god, that Michelle, I fucking have to meet this girl. She's from Portland, she's got a pit bull, she's amazing, I have to meet her. Like, we have a podcast about what we do and don't like about dating. We are giving you all the tools you need. Yeah. That's it. I'm off my soapbox.
We're making it very easy. But The worst part of this particular message was, so what brings you to Tinder? This is an Instagram DM. It said, so what brings you to Tinder? It's like, I think we actually responded like, this isn't Tinder, this is Instagram.
By that you mean you responded.
Was that me?
Yeah.
No, I responded.
I very seldom respond to those DMs.
I was feeling sassy. But I was like, this isn't Tinder, this is actually Instagram. Ha ha. But you should listen to her podcast.
So you're gonna get shameless plugs if that's what you do. And also not to mention the fact that both of our Instagrams, our personals, are tagged on our bio. So part of me is just like, are you stupid, bro? Like, are you stupid? Like, I get enough, like, on my personal account, like, hey, I saw you on Tinder. And I think all guys just use Tinder as a catch-all for every dating app because they don't want to actually admit to how many they're on. And so my favorite response on my personal, because it's listed on my Instagram bio, not to go down a rabbit hole, but I literally put on my bio on Insta, banned from Tinder, because I was getting guys trying to slide in saying they were on Tinder. I'm like, you can't find me on Tinder, I'm banned. So where you at, bro?
Motherfucker, you played yourself. Yeah, I feel like
Anyways.
going back to unmatching, most of mine recently have just been conversations that are like pulling teeth. One in particular, and so one of my pet peeves is if I'm making the effort to like respond to a Hinge prompt or a photo, and I'm starting a conversation, and then back they just say, "Hey." I'm like, no, like we talked about this on a previous episode. I'm like I made this so easy for you. Well,
I literally made the first move.
Yeah, all you have to do is answer the question. Well, last week I had a similar situation where I was already, like, we were already having a conversation, and I had asked someone, he said he had, like, picked up, like, started a new job or picked up an extra job or something. I was like, oh, well, you know, what do you do? What's your side hustle? He doesn't respond to that, and he just says, hey, as a response.
But you were already having the conversation?
Yeah. So, okay, we're not.
That actually makes my teeth hurt.
Like, I feel like we're gonna sound like a bitch, but like the theme of last week was just, are you stupid? Like,
No, not last week, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I don't know.
Right, because last week was cheap dates.
Cheap dates?
Right? No, that was this week.
I'm
sorry.
I don't mean the episode.
Oh.
I mean the theme of our lives.
Oh.
Like,
No,
we just had a lot of interactions where it was just like, are you stupid?
We did. And I mean, not to sound like more of a bitch than you just made us sound like, but I feel like that's just always the theme of our lives.
Some weeks are better than others.
Yeah, true. There are a few.
Every once in a while. But yeah, so I feel like unmatching, and again, like, of course, when it comes to if someone's being, I've had to unmatch because guys are being like inappropriate or just
Wanna have a threesome?
creepy or weird. Like, I had a friend that had to unmatch because the person's like, hey, I saw you somewhere. It was creepy. It was super creepy, so she had to like block him, I think.
That sounds right.
And then there's also, I put in unfollowing on Instagram, or like unfollowing on social. I feel like that's also a very particular story, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, I was going to ask because so unfollowing when it comes to social media, there had to be a point in the interactions where you decided to follow, right? And, I mean, personally, and how about you? Sorry, burping. But personally, like, I don't follow the person until I've met them at least twice, usually. There have been a few exceptions. If it's like relevant in a conversation that we're having or something. But usually I don't, and for the reason of just being too proud to want to unfollow somebody, I don't usually follow a guy to begin with. Do you?
Oh, no.
Okay. I'm like, wait, then why are we talking about this?
Well, because I think it was on our episode a couple weeks ago. We were talking about, I was talking about someone that I had like had pretty frequent like Instagram conversations with. Like when we were editing that episode, I was like, I don't know why I talk about these memes so much.
Oh,
like,
that guy.
But I wanted to bring this up because basically what had happened.
It was like a digital relationship.
I mean,
A meme ship?
I don't know.
Is
There
that
was-
a thing?
There was just like some frequent memeing and like it was like
Memeing.
and chatting. But
God forbid.
I was under the impression that this person was single, and then found out that they were not single. And I was like, oh, well, seems kind of weird that you'd be like messaging me every day. Like, I wouldn't like that if I were dating someone or in an exclusive relationship with someone and they were doing that. And then a brand new baby picture popped up in my feed. And
The last thing I'd want to see.
it was his, if that wasn't clear.
Just a random baby that popped up and triggered Michelle.
Yeah, unrelated. But it was one of those situations where it was just like, obviously that person, like, I don't know, they didn't owe me anything, but the fact that they hadn't at one point either alluded to them actually being in a relationship, and or the fact that I didn't know that all of the time that we've been like chatting, they were expecting a child.
And probably knew because it takes a whole 9 months for that.
Yeah, when you look at the timeline.
Just watch.
When you look at the timeline, so that was a situation where I actually did feel compelled to like send a message and just said, hey, like I actually think this is like really inappropriate. I think it's kind of disrespectful that like I was under this impression and this is the reality. And I was like, so I'm gonna unfollow you and like I would suggest you unfollow me. Like I don't wanna
cause drama
Well,
for
and
your baby mama.
Well, and even besides that, like I just don't want to interact anymore.
Yeah.
And of course that didn't get a response, but I at least like I put it out there and I was like, cool. So lots of breakups for me.
Lots of breakups. But I mean, that's one of those, I feel like that's one of those shitty dude situations where you kind of want to have like side girls.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, that's not fair to her either.
Right.
Which is the really shitty thing. Like, for me, like, if I had been in, like, that kind of a situation, I would have had something in the back of my mind being, like, and like, not to say that this is what the guy was doing at all, but, like, if the guy had been, like, actually sexually, like, overt and not just, like, sending memes or whatever, I would be like, yo, keep a leash on him.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not above sending a message to a girl, like, the girlfriend or something, if I find out about that, because I've like been in the situation too where like I've had that and I've had the girl reach out and be like, hey, sorry, didn't know.
Yeah.
It's fucked.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel good, but I'd rather have somebody, if the guy that I'm with doesn't have the audacity to be like, yeah, sorry, I'm cheating on you, then it's cool if like the other person does.
Yeah, I also feel like Instagram in and of itself creates a lot of gray area.
Oh, totally.
It creates a lot of gray area because it's like it's a personal interaction because you're DMing or you're reacting to a story, but like how much like what a weight does that really have, right? So it's just I think there's just a lot of gray area there too and you don't know someone's situation or their whatever but yeah, I don't know.
It's weird.
The newborn fucking baby in my feed, and I looked at whose it was, and I was like, what?
Ugh.
Like,
It's not exactly the shock you want from your like long distance meme friend.
bye.
Next.
I know. Now I have to solicit memes from other people. It's kind of sad.
That's what you me for?
Yeah.
Meme for?
But sometimes you nap.
I do sleep. Yes, I'm a human and I do sleep. For anybody wondering. So I think the other funny thing with unfollowing though, like, or not funny, actually it's definitely not funny, but so you've gone out with somebody a few times, you're following them, they're following you, whatever, and now you've had like a breakup conversation on some level. I'm very quick. If I have a conversation, like I had a conversation with a guy, and this was a while back, but we had a conversation and he was like, look, like I'm just not trying to get tied down right now. I know you know exactly who I'm talking about, but he's like, I'm not trying to get tied down, whatever. He'd already sent me messages on Instagram, so I never had to worry about that going into a folder, but I did unfollow him. I don't think he's noticed, and if he hasn't said anything about the fact that I unfollowed him because we are in fact still friends.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too where it does. It all just depends. But like I typically don't engage with someone on Instagram that I like met from the apps. Pretty much at all when I'm just like initially like going on dates with them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different if they end up as like more of a friend, which has happened several times.
Yeah.
Or something like that, or if it's the situation where it's like someone that maybe like I met in person, we actually connected on Instagram first or something like that.
Yeah.
And unless there's like a really negative, unless there's a reason, I typically don't. Although I did just unfollow someone else the other day who also had a surprise baby.
Can we not the surprise babies? We don't need any more Scorpios, guys. Stop getting pregnant in February.
I've experienced surprise babies.
Thank God.
I like opened Instagram with like one eye open at 7 in the morning, trying to like get up and get ready for the day, and just been surprised with a brand new baby of someone sliding into my DMs, and I'm just like, bro, what the fuck?
Ew, I hate that.
So I think I unfollowed that one too, because that was another one. I was like, this is
like
weird.
you just don't want to see the annoying potato baby. Anyways, no. So this was a situation that somebody that I had met in real life and was like seeing, and then he was just like, no, don't want to like be tied down, don't want to do any of that. And we were still socially very connected.
Mm.
And this was also before like pre-mute function.
Okay.
Because I want to throw that out there too, because especially when it comes like following, unfollowing, like when you're following somebody, for those of you who don't know, pro tip, you can mute people's stories if you go to their profile and click the little dots. You can mute their stories and you can also remove them from your newsfeed.
Mm-hmm.
These are things I love to, like, I get off on like the fact that I'm still following somebody, but have muted everything about them. I'm not sure why it's like such a trigger for me, but it really is. But like, so this was pre that that function was only available on Facebook at the time, was not on Instagram. And so I was like, look, I really like this guy, I don't want to see his shit anymore, and I just unfollowed him. And now at this point, due to the fact that like we are like, I think friends again is probably a better term, because obviously we lost a little bit of touch for a while, but like I'm too proud to like say anything about the fact that I'm not following him to his face.
Am I following him?
Yeah.
We'll talk. We'll take this offline.
We'll take this offline, but no. So it's just like, so to me, the following, unfollowing things, I'm very quick to unfollow somebody or at least mute them. Like I've muted friends' exes before because like I didn't want to lose touch with them, but didn't want to. And now that I can mute them, I don't need to just make it really dramatic by unfollowing. But
yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. So I kind of want to transition a little bit. We didn't really put this in the notes, but I kind of want to transition a little bit into like maybe like more serious breakups. And considering this is going to be a best practices episode, maybe we talk through like how to handle those. Please, like what?
All right, we're gonna get serious, guys.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot. What's been the most, and just like of course like a summation of it, but what's been like the most serious breakup that you've been through?
I would say 2, maybe 3, but honestly, what stands out to me, okay, like my second major breakup in life was with the guy that I'd been with for like 4 years. We lived together. He cheated on me. That was probably my most serious breakup. Second most serious being the guy that I was with right after him, which was honestly at the time just a very toxic relationship, and it was long distance. There was a lot of back and forth with me and him, until finally like we were both just like, oh my god, this is too much. He ended up like engaged with another kid on the way, so that was cool. But yeah, I mean those were, I don't know, like where do you want to go with this? What do you want me to get the details? Like what do you want?
No, I don't think we need to get into details.
Just trigger me, it's fine.
Just a surprise. Just a surprise trigger.
Fuck off.
So trying to like tie that into like best practices, right? So what were some of the things that you did? And this kind of comes up too because we have like a few friends that have gone through breakups like during quarantine, which is just a whole different situation.
Yeah.
But you you lived with someone, like were you stuck living with them after? We'll get into my shit too. Don't worry. This is not
okay. Good. All right. That's what matters.
I've got mine. So.
Oh yeah.
So were you stuck living with them after?
For a little bit, I was #blessed because I was still in college, and so that's why I'm being like facetious. But luckily, so it was my junior year of college that we lived together, and I obviously we were planning on our senior year. That wasn't gonna play out. I was able to move out within a month of when we broke up because we broke up in the spring, so it was right before school was out, and B, we were able to negotiate out of our lease. And this is actually I think actually the icing on the cake is the fact that this isn't in my tenant report or whatever bullshit it is when they look for apartments for you. Because our landlord in Chicago was such a piece of shit that he there was a bunch of stuff that he had promised us that we would have, for example, a washer dryer in the building. Sounds like something that could make you, able to charge a little bit more in rent, right? And so we were like, okay, cool, $900 for, washer dryer in building, cool. Yeah, it was April, and we still didn't have that. And so we were like, hey Ed, FYI, we broke up. I was like, I'm gonna move back home. Andy, I think, stayed for another month or two after I did, but we didn't complete the lease, more or less. And we're like, but you never gave us laundry. And he was like, yeah, you're right. It's fine. Literally, I was like, that was actually probably the best part of the breakup.
Hey, you know what? There's always a win. There's always a win. It might be a very, very, very tiny one.
Every cloud has a silver lining. I'm a firm believer.
There's a country song that I like where it's every rainstorm runs out of rain, right?
Oh,
I know.
that's
really
true.
cool, yeah.
I mean, eventually the clouds get tired.
unless you're in Portland. then it's just always raining.
There you have it. Well, your turn.
Yeah. She just snort.
That was actually my ankles cracking, but I'm fine.
It was blue.
Yeah.
So I was in a relationship for almost 6 years. We lived lived together. We adopted Blue together, obviously. He stayed with me.
That's why he has so many daddy issues.
That's why that's exactly why Blue has so many daddy issues. Oh, but we pretty much like helped run a business together. Our lives were super, super intertwined. And this is kind of one of the reasons, like, I was thinking about it with this episode is just with thinking about breakups, like, it was really challenging.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, ultimately going through not only losing that friend, that best friend you had for a significant portion of time. There were a lot of other places in life that were changing. Like, essentially everything turned upside down. So, I think we were in a really fortunate position that we were like renting my parents' house because they were living in Maui at the time. Well, they still are, but, so we didn't technically have a lease to break. But that being said, like, he had to figure out where he was gonna go. Obviously, he wasn't gonna stay at my parents' house. Like, I leave and he stays. Yeah, Danielle and Hannah would not have approved.
She'd lose it.
But so we were still there for at least, I think it was at least like 3 or 4 weeks. And then I was at the time I was like coaching. Like, we were both coaching at the same gym, and so I was still there for a couple of months, and then it just kind of finally hit a point where I was like, okay, this is just not gonna work. And then there were a lot of we had a lot of mutual friends, and so it was just one of those situations where we were truly like pull apart bread.
Yeah.
But it's like our lives had become so intertwined that we had to like kind of like slowly like pull it apart. And so it was pretty crazy, but I would say some of the big things that just like helped me get through that time were kind of refiguring out like, okay, these are things I like to do in this relationship. What are the things that I like to do by myself? How do I get comfortable doing things by myself? Because before that, I mean, I was always with like family or friends doing stuff. And so that coming out of that is when I really had to like learn how to be truly independent. And like, if I wanted to go to brunch by myself or go, do something by myself, like really just learning how to get comfortable doing that. Especially because I think when you're in a relationship from like your late teens to your mid 20s, that's a pretty significant amount of time where if you're not in a serious relationship, you are kind of learning how to adult and live on your own.
I was gonna say it's a crucial developmental time.
Whoa.
There's the shrink coming out of that chat.
I was like, is that the term your stepdad would use?
Probably.
But yeah, so I think, I'm just kind of curious in your situation, which it sounds like the timelines were maybe a little bit different, but maybe similar, but like what some of the things were that you did, like what advice can we give to people who are dealing with this during this weird time as well? Not that we're experts, but
yeah. I was gonna say, I'm like, God, my actual big breakups were years and years ago. But I mean, at the same time, I'm right with you. Like, I was getting out of this relationship. We were dating through the end of high school and college, and I really didn't know who I was without him. I was a ballerina growing up, and he was on the track team. He was a pole vaulter. And I don't want to say he got me to join track, but like he got me to join track. And I don't regret, like, I love that I'm really actually, especially just given where I went to school and the culture there, like I'm really, really happy that I was on the track team. That being said, he was a pole vaulter and I was mid-distance and we were both on the track team. The girl he cheated on me with was also on the track team.
Woof.
Yeah, big fat wolf. And so, yeah, we had a lot of, our social lives were very intermingled, and, it really wasn't until, this sounds bad, it really wasn't until I graduated and then moved to Austin that I feel like I really actually got to be like, oh hey, this is who I am. And to be honest with you, not to get deep, and I don't know, maybe this is like inspirational for anybody that's fucking been through this recently, but you know, it was going through that, and I was moving out here and just like completely being forced to be on my own. That I was just like, okay, wait, so like this is who I am when I'm actually me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really, really powerful. And I think especially if you're just constantly dating, you don't get a chance to realize that until you've had a bad breakup. And so I feel kind of grateful that like that happened to me earlier, because I've definitely spent the better part of the past like 6 to 10 years being like, hey, like this is actually who I am, like this is what I want to do. And I'm not gonna lie, it makes it real fucking difficult for me to think about like, hey, I want to be in a relationship with somebody.
Yeah, I think one of the other things too is I've heard some people refer to things as like a waste of time, and I absolutely would never look at it that way for mine. I mean, there are some situations where I'm like, yeah, that was probably like not in that relationship, but in other ones where it's like, no, that was literally a waste of my time.
Yeah.
But one of the big things for me was learning so much about myself in a relationship, things that I needed to improve in a relationship, realizing that I can't be a good partner if I'm not taking care of myself.
100%.
And like my own mental health and my own goals and things like that. And just really getting a better understanding of, okay, what does long-term look like for me? What does serious look like? What are because I would guarantee I don't remember what I thought my deal breakers were when I was 19 years old.
I couldn't tell you.
But, you know, I've learned more about like, okay, for a long-term partner at this stage in my life, like what I'm looking for and what I need. And I think that's like such a key thing. And I think you also have to go through, whether you've been with someone for a few weeks, but you were really into them and you're bummed out, or you're with someone for 6 years.
Yeah.
You have to process a breakup in whatever way you need to.
Yeah. Well, and so recently, we mentioned this like an episode or so ago. Like, for those of you who didn't listen to our first, I had a boyfriend when we started this podcast. Said boyfriend lasted all of 2 weeks. May he rest in peace. But so the total amount of time that I was with him was maybe a month and a half to 2 months. Not very long in the grand scheme of things, especially considering like my past relationships. Very, very short. But I was super, super bummed, and I was like really bummed about it because he like kind of ghosted. He did ghost, and then I called him out on it. And then I was like, yeah, no, like this, it was just this weird back and forth thing. I don't want to get into it, but I was bummed. And then I was hard on myself for feeling bummed out about it, because I was like, I was only with this guy for a month, or for 2 months. Like, why am I so upset? I was like, why? Granted, part of it did have to do with the fact that I was also upset about losing my job at the same time. But like, that was a lot of loss to deal with, and I was really, really hard on myself about it, which made it even more difficult. Moral of this spiel, made it even more difficult to deal with. And I kind of just had to like take a step back and own like, look, at the end of the day, like time is very relative, as I feel like great scientists say. Like, I don't really know much about science, but I've heard that time is relative. And so I just kind of had to take a step back and be like, hey, like, you are upset. Like, you thought that this was going to be this. You had this expectation of him. Your expectations were not met, and it's okay to be sad about that. And it's okay to be sad that you just lost your job along with 799 other people.
Yeah, I feel like giving yourself permission to feel your feelings. I know that might sound silly, but like giving yourself permission to feel your feelings. I mean, that was like with mine. I was like still struggling, you know, still sad, still bummed. Like a year later, and I was like, this is bullshit. Like, like I'm a badass bitch. Like I feel, you know, I'm emotional to a degree, but like I'm not a very sensitive person. I'm a pretty logical person, all that. And I needed to give myself permission to go through that process and to feel those things. And if you were only dating someone for 2 weeks, but you had really intense feelings for them and you're sad, like that's okay. Like don't be hard on yourself for that. And I think that's kind of the point that you're trying to make, is like you had to let go of beating yourself up for being sad.
What is that? It was just making it worse.
You're sad and you're mad. Sounds like a Scorpio thing to me.
Totally a Scorpio thing. It was I was like very self-loathing, which is just, very on brand. But no, I mean, I totally agree with you. And I think, you know, especially now, and especially if you've been in like some of those longer term relationships too, you can look at certain things and think like, oh, this is so trivial.
Mm-hmm.
But if something or someone is making you feel a certain way, like not to sound like a fucking, I don't know, Hallmark card, your feelings are valid.
I'm totally on board with that. I had a conversation with someone like last week about that too, where it's kind of the same thing. They're like, you know, this is how I'm feeling about this situation. I was like, your feelings are your feelings. Like it's okay to give yourself permission to feel them and look for productive ways to process them. That's kind of the other piece of it, is figuring out what you need to not just like stuff them, but to actually like let yourself feel and get through it. Like for me, I'm not a big crier, but
Shocking.
Sometimes like I'm not a big crier, but like after that breakup, I cried like nonstop for like a month straight. I also went on like a lot of runs.
Damn.
The breakup body is real.
Yes, love it.
No, but I think it's just like accepting the different ways that you can process, and honestly like asking for help, whether that's therapy, whether that's chatting with friends, whether that's whatever support you need, like being open to asking for it and not judging yourself or being like, oh well, you know, I was only with him for a month, this is stupid. It's like, no, like whatever level you're feeling is valid to how you're feeling, and the people who are your support system will understand that and will be there for you.
Totally. And I definitely had a problem too, just being like to friends and stuff and being like, I'm still upset about this, because I felt embarrassed. And like looking back on it, like, I understand obviously why I was embarrassed, but like at the end of the day, like it is what it is. Like, and we all get upset over small things sometimes, and sometimes you do need somebody to be like, hey, look, and say like, hey, Michelle, like you're being stupid about this. He's probably, or like, you know, if it's something like, oh, like he's obviously not cheating on you, you're just, something triggered you or whatever. But then if that's a situation, then there's also the option too to take that, because your feelings are valid, to go to the person that you're with and be like, look, you did this and it made me feel this way. And I think that's also like, you can go in and like have what maybe in the beginning of this we framed as like a breakup text, but just be like, hey, like this is the situation, this is how I feel about it. Can you please like explain your side of it? Can you give me some context? Because I've had a lot of work with those conversations. They tend to go over pretty decently, and even if they don't go over decently, it's again like you're getting clarity.
Well, and that's the thing too. There's nothing worse than like being in your own head and spiraling and stewing. Rather than, and this is like not to that degree at all, but this was like when I was getting slow ghosted. But it was actually bothering me.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I don't know, like
Annoyed?
I was annoyed, but I was like bummed. Like I was affected by it. And so I had
Who are
to
you to do this to me?
but like I had to have that conversation to get off my chest, and
Yeah.
that applies at like all different levels, all
Totally.
different things, where wherever you are in dating. But you also, I think one of the other things though is like you have to respect the response that you get from the other person. Like
Yes.
you can't assume they're going to respond a certain way. You can hope for the best in
Of
the
course.
ideal response. But I think ultimately, and that comes with like breakup texts as well.
Mhm.
Like, sending that text and being like, hey, what's going on with this? If they're like, actually, I just don't like you anymore. Like
You suck.
you suck. You're boring. Can you imagine if someone said I was boring?
I would be very scared to know what they use. Very scary.
But yeah, so we'll step off our soapbox here. But I just did want to make sure we covered a little bit of that and just some of the ways to deal with that. And again,
Yeah.
during this time, I can't even imagine. But yeah, ultimately you gotta look out for number one, which is yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think the moral of the story here is like if it's bothering you, like, then at the end of the day, like, you need to do something about it, whatever that looks like. Whether it's you need to go to somebody or you need to have a conversation with somebody, or maybe you just need to fucking spitball it with a therapist. Like, everything's fine. But I was thinking, I've recently had a conversation too where I was like, I don't really totally know where this is gonna go. But I noticed a few behavioral changes and I brought it up and he was like, no, look, like he's like, I understand why you're thinking that, and like, I apologize that I've made you feel that way. That's not my intention.
Mm-hmm.
And then to just continue, like, then you progress the conversation, like, this is what I want, this is what I'm looking for, and like, is this where you stand, yes or no? Yes, okay, then like we're on the same page again.
Right, it's the level set.
Exactly, and I think most often like we do talk about like, okay, where it's like literally just a breakup, but it can be anything, and as long as you're just saying like what you need to say to get off your chest, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Right? We're all fine.
There's a fire burning behind us. Everything's fine.
I know, like, I'm still so post-election coverage, like, hangover bullshit that I'm like, everything is awesome.
Well, the opposite of breakups,
Makeups?
makeups? No, we're not gonna get into that.
I was gonna say makeup stuff is great.
I was gonna transition into our clothes. And
I know, that's why I had to derail it.
It wouldn't be an episode if there wasn't some derailment.
Exactly.
We are working on a socially distanced speed networking event at Wanderlust.
Speed networking.
My bad.
Y'all.
It's still working hours in the Pacific Northwest right
I'm
now.
not with you.
Speed dating, okay. Speed dating event. We were so pumped. We were really excited about this, and then we got to chat with Sammy a little bit last weekend, and I was just like on a marketing events high for a few hours. I was like, I'm so pumped. So we will release more details
As we decide them.
Because everything is totally planned, but no.
We'll get there.
But essentially, it's going to be, so speed dating event, socially distanced, of course, like masks in, masks out. We're going to figure out other protocols there to make it as safe as possible. But there's going to be a wine tasting component to it, which I think is so dope.
So dope. Also, I was going to say, book your calendars. It'll be probably the first or second weekend of December. We want to do it before the holidays. So keep an eye out if you want to meet some people.
Save the date. And then, Marie, where can people find us?
Swipe on the city. Like, you remember that one time we did a really cute closing? No, we are literally Swipe in the City everywhere. Swipe and the City on Insta.
And Swipe and the City on YouTube.
Yes, so excited about YouTube. swipeandthecity@gmail.com.
Yeah, we don't get enough emails.
I know, I kind of want some more I've never wanted emails in my life, but I want them now.
I want some emails. So if you're still here, thank you for listening. Definitely stay tuned to our social for updates on all of the things.
All the things.
And yeah, we'll be back next week.
Yeah, we love you guys. Also, if you love us too, please share, rate, review, subscribe. You know, the usual plugs that all the podcasters want to push out. Again, we're on Apple Podcasts too, and you can actually give us a star rating. So please don't give us below 5 stars because I don't.